Welcome to the latest episode of the National Leadiology Association. Today, we're going to have a deep dive. We're going to get some emotions going. Tadd mentioned that he's he's gonna get really emotional about it. Um, we Today's episode is called Emotional Intelligence in Leadership. Um, I am your host, Dr. Amin Sanaia. As usual, my tag team partner, Tanner Thorp.
Hey everybody, Tanner Thorp, child of God, father of boys, faith-based authenticity coach. You know the deal.
Absolutely. And again, today he's coming not from the leadership couch or his background, usual background, but he's up in heaven. Thank you,
I'm,
sir.
I'm, I'm on a rocket ship through space.
There you go. Joining us, special guest, Mr. Juan Santana.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Glad to be back here. Looking forward to our discussion today. Intelligence and leadership. Does that really match? Well, we'll get into it.
Yeah, we're about to find out. You have the right sign behind you there, man, with the Yankees fan man cave. I love that.
And
And
I'm trying to build up to you. Trying to build up to you.
all right. And also Mr. Tadd Weese.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Glad to be back.
All right. So today we're going to start off with a little exercise. Just to change it around, man. We're not gonna get into discussions right away. So let's get the neurons firing. If your leadership style had a theme song, what would it be and why? Woo! I can start. I can start if you guys want. If you guys need some time there to think about it.
Yeah.
All right, for me, it would be Man in the Mirror. And I know, Juan, you mentioned it earlier. That's why I was laughing. I didn't want to say anything because I already had it down. And Man in the Mirror. Why? Because it embodies a lot of what my guiding principles are um, about self, looking at self first, self improvement, growth, and being able to make a difference. So for me, that will be it. All right, who's next?
Wow. So theme song. Gosh. So I have a favorite song that is my it's my favorite song, but I don't know if it's my theme song. I, so everything in me wants to say the Four Seasons, just because life is all about seasons. But I am going to say my favorite song. It's a song by a group called the Avett Brothers, and it's a song called "Murder in the City." And it sounds, maybe a harsh song, but it's actually a very poignantly beautiful song about what we leave behind. And to your point also. I mean, it's about who we are and the impact that we want to have on those around us.
Awesome. All right, who's next?
All right, I'll give it a try. And let's see, since you already took my song.
It's the Rocky theme song, isn't it?
Yeah. But I say Eye of a Tiger.
Oh, I was gonna say Eye of the Tiger next.
There you go.
Because I don't never give up, right? And it's about, falling, being able to get up again and just keep fighting. And just keep going forward.
I like it. All right,
Uh,
Tadd, you better bring it, man.
Well, so I'm kind of vacillating between a song by Newsboys called "Wherever I'm At, That's Where the Party's At," or
Ooh.
on a more serious note, there's one by a group called Ian Berlin, and it's called "The Unwinding Cable Car," and it's all about believing that you're a child of God and your worth is much greater than what the world says it is. And so, yeah, it's uplifting. And that's what I try to bring to my teams is a belief in themselves that they may not have.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So you see, man, we'll start off with that. Well, I mean, we can get emotional right after that, Tad. So you promised that, and look at that, it came to fruition.
So Amin, can we make sure when we put this out that we actually put each of those songs in the description so
Absolutely. That's
people
why I'm
people
doing
can
it.
listen to it? All
That's
right,
why I'm
awesome.
doing it. Come on, man. I wrote it down. As a matter of fact, I was writing the reason why I got inspired to do this was because of yesterday's conversation. And
Ooh,
on the description on yesterday's conversation, I added a few things from that. I was like, oh man, we can now I was like clicking, okay, we can do this in every episode and do something different. So in the description when we promote it, people can get engaged with it. So uh, it's going to be a stable moving forward. We're going to be doing this.
love it, love it.
Awesome. So in looking at emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence, and I want to make sure that we take the time to really look at the difference between emotional intelligence and IQ and just the intelligence factor, because there's a big difference. You know,
Hmm.
you can for business purposes. I wrote an article on this on what's more important, EQ or IQ. In leadership. So I want to get your thoughts on that before we go into the emotional intelligence piece and the practical applications for it in leadership.
Who's going first?
You're already on, man. Go
Well,
for it.
Well, you're
okay.
on, yeah.
So, I don't think that you can overstate the need for a high emotional intelligence quotient. And I've seen far too many times where there's been people that have been promoted, the Peter principle, past their own abilities, and not because they lack the intellect, because they lack the emotional intellect to deal with the challenges that come with managing so many different people, especially when there's trouble in the group. And I've witnessed far too many times as well that there are opportunities or times rather when a leader with a low intelligence equivalent reacts just so violently. I mean, they go from 0 to 100 without taking anything else into consideration. And I find that those that have a high emotional intelligence typically have a far more even keel and are willing to let the first rush of adrenaline and anger that may creep up during a challenge settle and push to the side so they can get to the heart of what actually is going on.
I like what you said, and it reminds me of some of the things that Tanner has mentioned, and actually one of his guiding principles. You can't always control the first thought that comes to your mind, but you can catch it on the second, third, even on the 1,000, as long as you catch it. So I really like that. Who else wants to go?
Juan, why don't you jump in and then I'll jump in after that.
Yeah, sure, sure. Uh, but here's the interesting part, right? I personally, right, always emphasize more on the EQ side, right? Because for me, my team needs to be the one that needs to bring the intelligent piece, right? I need to focus on people. I'm always been a people person, right? I need to listen to my team. I need to, embrace my team. I need to empower my team. And, I don't really need the intelligence piece. I don't need, to be the smarter person in the room. I just need to be empowered, the team in the room, and they need to be the smarter people in the room. They need to be the one that, giving me the top-notch work. They're the one that need to be, producing, especially in my field in software development. They're the one that needs to be building state-of-the-art, technology, software, especially the way it's moving so quickly. So for me, the EQ is definitely, you need to, embrace your team. And you see it many times, you see some of this, leaders who could be the smartest person in the room, but when it comes to, leading a group, it falls apart. because now it gets into what we got last time, into the micromanagement piece, where they want to be in every little piece of the detail, and and tell you exactly everything what you need to do.
Yeah, a lot of the things that you are mentioning and some of the things that Tad mentioned goes into the four key components of EQ, which is self-awareness, right? I mean, do we know ourselves? Self-regulation, which exactly what Tad just mentioned. To what you mentioned, Juan, with the social awareness, when you're dealing with your team. And the last one is relationship management. That is, I mean, as a leader, that's probably the one of the most important aspects of what you do in your role. You know, how are you managing those relationships between yourself and your team, and between your all your different teammates together? Tanner?
Yeah. So so I just listened to a really interesting interview with a guy by the name of Chris Langman. Chris Langman, Malcolm Gladwell actually wrote about him in Outliers, and he is considered the smartest man alive. His IQ is higher than anybody else, and it's really interesting to hear his conversation on what intelligence really is. Now, this guy can break down quantum physics, and he can break down complex mathematical equations, but he said in reality, when you're looking at IQ as what it is stated as in IQ tests and things like that, it's a very localized, specific type of testing. It's a very localized, specific type of questions.
Yes.
Emotional intelligence is very broad. It really is emotional regulation. It really is understanding the dynamics of different personalities and what they bring to the team, and how you can work with different people to get different outcomes. I think that IQ is important. Let's not understate the fact that being smart in your field is important, right? Whether you're making widgets or you're building software or you're putting together complex mathematical equations to understand the stars, intelligence is important. How you relate to people is on a different level of importance. I think IQ is great for managing processes.
Yeah.
I think EQ is important for leading people. And that's what we talk about on these podcasts all the time is leadership. What does it take to be a good leader? In order to be a good leader, you have to know your people. You have to. And you can't get to know your people if you're not emotionally intelligent yourself, if you can't self-regulate, if you can't take a step back, if you can't practice the pause, if you can't, work through interpersonal dynamics, if you can't recognize that everybody learns a little bit different. So in order to be a good leader, you have to work on your emotional intelligence, and it can't be faked.
No.
It can't be faked for long periods of time, right? You can fake it in the beginning, but I mean, as you and I were talking about on the last podcast, people will be able to tell if you are not genuine, right? You can fake it a little bit, but then everybody will recognize that you're not who you say you are. And if you're not emotionally intelligent in your own personal life and how you regulate your own personal life, you're going to struggle to be emotionally intelligent in how you lead others.
Powerful. Anything else that we want to add there, or we jump into the next one?
Let's move on.
All right, let's do this. What are the biggest challenges leaders face when developing emotional intelligence, and how can they overcome them? I'll put it on the chat. What are the biggest challenges leaders face when developing emotional intelligence, and how can they overcome them?
That's an interesting. Can they overcome it?
Yes.
I will have to challenge that.
Okay,
Maybe in
let's
some
challenge it.
cases you can, but there's one thing. There's this term I like to use because I have worked with a few of those managers that I call them night court manager. If you remember the series Night Court,
Whoa,
right?
I love Night Court.
whoa. Let's.
Cole and Ross.
You cannot move on after you make that statement. I want to
John
know the
Mayer
story
can't.
behind that.
So if you remember the TV series Night Court, he became a judge because he was the only one in his house on a Saturday night, and the judge that was in the court had passed away. So he was the only person that was available on a Saturday night because that's how exciting his life is. And I find myself that some of these managers, a Night Court manager, it seems like there was no one else available. So by default, they get promoted, and they get promoted, I will have to say premature, for not having the tools necessary for them to be successful. And then it's just mistake after mistake. So not sure if those Night Court managers can overcome those defects because they never were given the tools necessary to become a manager. They got promoted, to me, a little bit premature just because they were there that day, I guess, but
Yeah,
not because they deserved it, not because they earned, not because they were the right person for the job.
Well,
Well,
even at that, I mean, I'll say two things on there. First, yes, you can overcome it, and I'll talk about that last. But even when people that you say deserve it get promoted into leadership position, you can't just say, okay, here's your promotion, have a nice life. No, there's a process. Just like if you're going to be an engineer or software engineer, you have some prerequisites that you need to fulfill before you do that. If you're going to be an electrician, a plumber, there's some prerequisites that you need to learn. There's some skills you need to learn for that. Same thing for a leadership position, no matter where, no matter what company. There's some prerequisites that needs to be done because being a specialist in doing a job versus being responsible for the specialist that does a job is two parts, distinct parts of the spectrum. That's where companies fail people is not giving them the development piece to be able to get promoted and be successful. You need that leadership development piece. And if you don't have that leadership development piece, man, you're gonna have a lot of those night courts.
Oh, yes.
So I'll say two things here real quick. First, I didn't know that was the premise to that sitcom, so now I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it. But second, to your point, Juan, I think that failure is not for the night court manager. That failure is for the leader that put him in that position without any type of training or preparation. I have seen this many, many times in senior care where a nurse gets put into a supervisor position or charge nurse position just simply because they're really good at their job. And the assumption is they're going to be a really good manager because they're really good at their job. And to Amin's point, that is not the case. It is rarely the case. Managing somebody that's doing something that you've done so well it does require an emotional intelligence because you have to be willing to teach that person a better way of doing it and then receive their input back on why they think their way is better or different without interjecting your own personality and your own belief systems and your own anger or frustration into the system. And when any leader promotes somebody up to what I mentioned earlier, the Peter Principle, without that type of preparation, without that type of guidance, without giving them the tools and the training and the ongoing support, then yeah, unfortunately, that night court manager is going to fail, and they're going to be scarred, and they may or may not be able to get past it. But that's not necessarily on them. That's on the person that put them in that position.
Yep, on the organization and that person that promoted them.
Yeah.
I agree with both of you guys. And there are two types of night court manager, right? There are those that know, I have an issue. Let me work on it. And then there's those that the ego just blow up so much because I'm now in charge. But hey, it's my way or the highway. I don't want to listen to anybody.
And that is a perfect example of somebody with a low emotional intelligence.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, that person doesn't have emotional intelligence. And so, you know, I just want to touch on the night court thing real quick. You know, Judge Harry, Judge Harry was also a judge. You know, it's not like he just was some random guy who was brought in on a Saturday night. And what was Judge Harry's favorite method of connecting with people? Well, he was an amateur magician.
Magic.
Right? So he brought in his own personality to how do I relate with people? The question, and I agree with everything you said, Juan. I agree with everything you said, because oftentimes people are promoted into manager roles when they have no business being a leader, right? And as Amin stated, there's a difference between moving somebody into a role because they're good at what they were doing and moving them into a role because they are going to be a good leader and move the department forward. Managers and leaders are very different. Managers manage processes. Leaders lead people. And I think there's a misconception that just because somebody has a title makes them a leader. That doesn't make them a leader. Right? What makes them a leader is how they engage with their team and gets them to move whatever the priority is forward. Right? The best leaders that I know are lifelong learners. The best leaders that I know are the ones that have that emotional intelligence to say, you know what, I don't know everything. And as a matter of fact, I was saying something to your is he your cousin?
Yes, yeah. My
Yeah,
nephew.
so your nephew. So I was saying something to your nephew the other night because he's in a very similar situation. He's in a role where he's very young in the kitchen. He's being looked at to possibly be put into a senior leadership role in that kitchen as a sous chef. He's applied for that. He's with a lot of people who've been in that position, and he and I had an interesting conversation in that there's a woman who works in that kitchen that she's been there for a length of time, a considerable length of time. And she believes that just because she has seniority that everybody should listen to her. And I asked him, I said, does she do what she's supposed to do? Like, does she follow all the rules, and do people look at her as an example of what to do? He said, absolutely not. I said, well, then her seniority doesn't matter. Right? Her seniority doesn't give her any clout to be able to sit there and say, you have to do things the way that I do them, or you have to give me respect. She may feel that way, but that's not how that works, right? We as leaders know that. We as people who've been in many different dynamic industries understand the nuances between that. What he's going to struggle with, and this was the conversation that I had with him, is if you get that sous chef role, she's not going to just automatically listen to you because you're now her boss, right? She has it built up in her brain that she runs that kitchen because she's been there for so long. So you're going to need to get with her on a personal level and get her on your side, because if she's on your side and she believes in what you're doing and she aligns with what you're trying to do as the leader in that kitchen, or in the hierarchy of how that kitchen is, then everyone else will look to her because she's thrown her weight around for her seniority for so long. That's the emotional intelligence piece that's so important. And for somebody like Joseda, who's you know, he's younger in that role, it's super important for him to be able to understand at a young age, hey, you know what, the way I approach these things has way more to do with the processes that need to get done. And I can speak to that from my own experience, because I was you know, a hot shot chef for a long time, and I was a jerk like what you see on television with Gordon Ramsay. And I had like a 98% turnover rate because people wouldn't stay with me, or I'd fire them on the drop of a hat because you were going to do things my way. Right? I had to learn the hard way about emotional intelligence. And that's where I also go back to the question and say, you know what, you can learn it. Because I could have sat in my arrogance forever. My skills are strong enough that I could have walked my way into multiple kitchens or grown myself in multiple kitchens and restaurants and things like that. But I couldn't go home at night and sit with myself and go, why does everyone leave? Without taking a real hard look inside and go, maybe it's not everyone else. Maybe it's me.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Self-awareness.
Man in the mirror. Start with the man in the mirror, right?
That's right.
it. I mean, those are what you mentioned, Tanner. Those are the biggest barriers. To Juan's point, can they change? Well, you got self-awareness. Can you be self-aware? Number two, the pride, the ego. Can you get over that?
I
Yeah.
would add that there's a third piece. Do you have somebody prepared to invest in you to show you how to do that? Because I don't know if you all had mentors that showed that with you, or if it was just the school of hard knocks. But until I had a mentor that actually helped me see it for what it was, I was beating my head against the wall. Why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? And kudos for you, Tanner, that you're pouring into Jose's life. That is just, that's amazing. And I think that as leaders, we have a responsibility to those that are coming up behind us to pour into them to the extent that they'll allow us and they want.
Mm-hmm.
But paying that forward is I think what the National Leaderology Association is all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I will shout out I mean, probably the most influential mentor that I had in my life. Her name was Sarah Dickinson. And I mean, she led a kitchen, and I've never seen somebody so graceful in the way that she would handle the kitchen and the teams. And I mean, like, she's one of those, like, I tell her all the time, and I've told, other people that know her, she's like a Disney princess. I mean, like, she could walk out into the woods and animals will walk up. I've seen it happen. Like, birds will land next to her, and she just has that energy. She'll tell you when you're messing up. She'll tell you real hard if you're making a mistake. But the grace that she shows it with, it was so impactful for me that when I had to take that hard look in the mirror, that's what I questioned myself. Would Sarah act like this? And would Sarah be proud of me in the way that I'm conducting myself after having been under her tutelage? And the answer is no.
That's the great thing about a mentor, is you get to use them as a barometer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I apologize, everyone. I'm driving, but I'll show you why. I have my 13-year-old space cowboy out here with me. He's on select basketball teams, so we've been driving a lot with different practices and games and tournaments and stuff. So
that kid's not 13 years old. Come on now.
He's 13. He's 6'2". He's a giant.
You got a birth certificate for the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, that's it. Let me guess. He plays baseball.
He played baseball until this year. This year, he decided he didn't want to play baseball anymore. It's all basketball. But
there you go.
There you go.
Well, I guess if you make it big like Michael Jordan, then you can go play baseball afterward.
That's right.
Multi-sport athlete. That's it. Usually, most athletes play multiple sports until they become professional.
Yeah, he runs track, and he's always played multiple sports, but basketball has become the real love. So that's what he's pouring the majority of his time into. But I mean, this kid's dedicated. You want to talk about leading at 13 years old? He's the one who is in the gym at 6:45 in the morning with me. He's there right after school. He has practices 4 nights a week. And all of his friends that want to be the star athlete too, they all look up to him as a leader. So
that's awesome.
Good stuff. Yeah.
He's a good kid, but don't tell him I told you that.
Okay.
Well, getting back to on the topic, so mentorship, it's I believe Tadd brought that up. It's such a big deal for leaders, especially young leaders. If you're listening to this, find a mentor. You need a good mentor. It takes time, but when you find that person, just let them pour into you. I try to be always mentoring at least 1 or 2 young professionals so that we create better leaders for our future. We we can't sit on the sidelines and say, oh, look, this generation, these newer generations are not going to be good. They're this and that. No, stop being one of the naysayers and be part of the solution by mentoring them and helping them and say, hey, I've done all these mistakes. Let me show you a better way if you're
Right.
willing to listen.
Well, and I would go on to say that when it comes to mentorship, it doesn't necessarily have to be just one person. And if you can't find somebody who is ready, willing, and able to pour into you, everybody on this screen that you're seeing right here is somebody that I would consider a mentor in my life because I seek them for counsel and guidance. And I've got other people in my life the same way, both personally and professionally. So find somebody that has that experience that you look up to, that has something to offer, and then ask them, because they may not have ever considered the possibility of having knowledge that they could impart to you.
And if you're struggling to find a mentor, I mean, as Tadd said, all the other people on this call are mentors to me as well. But Amin and I do this National Leaderology podcast pretty regularly. Reach out to us. I'd be more than happy to at least field questions. I may not have the time and the bandwidth to fully mentor, but I can definitely answer questions, point in the right directions, and things like that. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
Good stuff.
Don't wait for somebody to say, "Yeah, here's the mentor." Go look for a mentor.
Yeah.
Because my experience has been that no one's going to tell you, here's someone that's going to help you. You have to go get that help.
Absolutely. And Juan has been doing that for many years. I can tell you, I've seen that and I've joined them several times. So do it, go for it. Let's go to our second question. How can leaders effectively use emotional intelligence to navigate workplace conflicts?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go. So it goes back to Tanner's statement. You can't always control the first thought that comes to your mind, but you can't control the second. But it's not just that. It's understanding where they're coming from. It's the ability to say, okay, I appreciate that you're having this issue. Please explain it to me. Okay, can you tell me a little bit more? And then, is there anything else? Those are Simon Sinek tools. And if you get to the root cause of what their issue is, you may find out that what their issue is not what you thought it was, because in your mind, you were jumping to a conclusion based on your emotional reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that time to dive in, ask those clarifying questions, and to really explore the root cause analysis, if you will, of the conflict, you can oftentimes find a fairly simple solution, but it does take a level of emotional intelligence, because a lot of people that are unfamiliar with or don't have the tools to express themselves intellectually, they'll default back to an emotional response. And you have to make sure that you set that aside personally and try to guide them through the actual intellect of the issue.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that we all, at some point in our lives, develop personality biases.
Yeah.
Right? Our personalities, up until the point that we start deconstructing them, are an amalgamation and a construct of what we were built sociologically, in our familial patterns, in the friend groups that we've had. All of those different things develop what our personality is. And until we start to break that apart, we won't really see where we have personality biases. One of my favorite things to do with team members that are having issues is if I have a team member, if I have Sally Sue come to me and she's like, Joey doesn't listen to me and he's always taking my stuff, my paper clips, right? And then Joey comes to me and says, Sally Sue's always complaining about paper clips, right? The last thing that I'm going to do is spend any time sitting with them individually. I will grab both of them together and I will say, hey, what's going on here? Because to Tadd's point, it's often not about paper clips, right? It's often about some sort of personality difficulty that they're having with one another, or a miscommunication, or the inability to communicate. And what happens when you do that, when you work with your integrity, is you foster trust, right? Your team starts to trust, hey, you know what, you're solution driven, not biased or playing favorites or anything like that.
Yep.
And I think also has to do, in the work environment now, we're dealing with different generations, and, each generation do things differently. And so for some people might be challenging to adjust, where,
Yeah.
Somebody sends an email, or somebody sends a text, or you want to have a face-to-face conversation. And sometimes it's just a different way of working. And sometimes people struggle to adjust to how the other person works. So yeah, having a conversation, sitting with a person is basically the best way. I will tell you something I did when I was teaching my project management class. I would spend the first 2 weeks analyzing the classroom. I will observe the class, look at the personality, and then on the third week, I would assign a group project. But I would not let them pick their group. I would assign the groups, and I purposely put in people that I knew was going to conflict with each other. And then they would come to me and complain, like, "Oh, I don't really want to work with this person." And I tell them, says, when you graduate, because you're about to graduate, you're not going to be working with your friend. You're not always going to be working with that perfect person. So you need to be able to learn how to deal with those, conflicting personality. So whole purpose of that was that just to teach you project management, but teach you a necessary tool that you can take with you into real life. And in the fact of life that we don't always like the person that's sitting next to us, but we have to learn to deal with it and step up to the plate and see past whatever difference is there and move on.
That's a brilliant way of handling that. But yeah, I think it goes back to kindergarten. You may not like the kid in the sandbox with you, but that doesn't mean you throw sand in his face.
Well, no.
I was the one throwing sand for sure. Like I said, it took me a long time to get my emotional intelligence down. So
Yeah. To Juan's point, we do. I mean, I was reading an article a couple of months ago that it stated and it shows statistics. We have 4 generations at the workplace currently. Most workplaces have multiple. Some have 4. I mean, you're taking a lot of dynamics, a lot of different upbringings, and it's very different. Um, and as a leader, you're dealing with all of it.
yeah,
You don't get to pick who you're going to deal with. You're dealing with all of it. So investing in yourself, investing in having a mentor, investing in leadership development courses, coaching, that is essential for you to be successful so you can relate better to others. Get to know yourself first, okay? Who you are. How do you do the self-awareness piece? How do you do the self-regulation piece? So that then you can serve others better.
yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, can we please get past the we're gonna blame the other generation for being lazy or whatever it is. I mean, it's tired. The baby boomers thought that the Gen Xers were worthless, right? And then the Gen Xers thought the millennials were worthless, and the millennials think the Gen Zs were. I mean, come on. What we've witnessed is that we have sped up as a society, as an evolution to our personalities in such monumental ways that we learn different.
Yes.
I mean, when all of us were kids on this call right now, if we wanted to find out any facts about the blue whale, what did we do?
Encyclopedia.
We would go get an Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yep.
right? And we would trust that that was right, and then as we started to get a little bit older, then this thing called the internet came around, right? Now, my 13-year-old who's sitting right next to me, if he wants to find out a blue whale, you know what he does? He says, "Hey Siri," and Siri tells him what a blue whale, the facts that he wants to know about it. If he wants to understand a diet for a high performing student athlete, what does he do? He goes to Chat GPT. So the way that we learn and the advancements that the younger generations bring in to our workforce cannot be understated and should not be minimized or criticized.
No, go ahead, Tadd.
I think that everything that you're touching on is perfect. The availability of information and the speed at which we can consume it has grown exponentially in our lifetimes, and I'm sure we'll continue to do the same. When it comes to emotional intelligence, though, I think that, and I'm going to paint with broad strokes here, so bear with me. Younger generations, my kids included, spend so much time on social media, and especially through the curse of the pandemic, that their emotional development was stunted because they lacked that personal interaction with people and that accountability for that face-to-face interaction. Because I can be a keyboard warrior and say all sorts of nasty crap on a keyboard because I know that you can't touch me. But would I say that in front of your face when I know I might get punched in the nose? No. And as leaders, we have to realize that that has been a handicap that they've been burdened with, and we need to be prepared to address that, not just punitively, but encouraging through education, through providing tools. And I think that you'll find that a lot of the younger generation, they may need a softer touch, but that doesn't mean they're stupid by any stretch of the imagination. They just simply need something that they didn't get in their formidable years. And unfortunately, they're in the workplace, and we are the ones tasked with bringing them up to speed, as it were.
I think the biggest challenge with the young generations now is when you tell them they got to come into the office 5 days a week. They don't know what that is.
But that brings up a good question. Do they? Do they need to? I mean, we come from a generation that productive value was based on the hours worked, right? At least in my house, what I was raised on was working hard meant working long hours, and you would work 12, 14 hours a day, and that would be a badge of honor, right? And our younger generation has learned, and through the pandemic, we've learned that maybe we can be more efficient. Yes. Maybe we don't need to be in the office as much. Maybe a hybrid workforce looks like it. And I think that, again, goes back to what Tadd was saying about understanding how we can be encouraging in our approach to these things as opposed to punitive.
Yep. I mean, in various previous episodes, Tanner, you and I have discussed this same topic of, it's not a badge of honor to work 16 hours a day.
No,
it's not. The way we're built, there's only so much that we're going to be able to accomplish mentally throughout the day, that it gets to a point where, I mean, there's so many research studies, Adam Grant has several of them, showing that after so many hours of work, you're not even being productive at all. You're just a body. And how is anyone benefiting from that? Because you're not, the company is not. So it's like, okay, we're just, taking dollars and just burning them because, the all full tells, stories of, hey, if you're not putting in 12, 13, 14 hours a day, then you're not working. That's not real. Yes, we will work hard the hours that we work, but it's not always we have to work harder. No, let's be let's be smart about it. Let's work hard the hours that we do work so we can be productive, at to a higher percentage. But that working more hours is better, or more, or you get better results. That's been shown, proven that it's not true.
Unless you're Elon Musk.
No, I agree to
That guy's
disagree.
on, that guy's on a different level.
Yeah.
I agree to disagree on that because I know because I came from that environment, right? I did 20 years in finance,
Mhm.
IT, and 12 hours was half a day. Literally, it was half a day. You weren't even working, and it depends in the industry. And coming in finance and IT, when you have an issue, you're talking about potentially millions of dollars that the company could be losing because the defect or something is wrong, So I really work. I mean, I've done 3 days consecutive in the office without leaving, working on a project. And the only reason I left was because my wife went to pick me up because it was Thanksgiving. Otherwise, we still would have been there, working because we had a deadline to finish. And sometimes some of those deadlines are, you can't miss them, right? It's finance. You got to hit those targets because those days are not flexible.
Okay, so
Was
let me
that
ask you
the
this question then.
rule or was that the exception?
What was that?
Was that the rule or was that the exception? I mean, was it expected that you were going to work all the time like that?
No, whenever we have projects, we had targets, we put in whatever hours was necessary to hit hit those dates.
Sure, sure. I can get behind that. Absolutely.
But that cannot be the
That
rule.
can't be the norm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that cannot be. Tadd was going to say something.
So let me ask you a question, Juan. If in retrospect, looking back to that, was it a planning issue that should have been addressed up front and perhaps extended that deadline to a more reasonable time? Or was it an inefficient use of time in the early portion that led to a crunch in the end?
Well, I will have to probably say it's probably a lot of unknown, especially, we built a global application that we roll out throughout the world for this particular bank. And there's a lot of stuff you didn't know until you got there.
Sure.
So you
Okay.
go there with a mindset that this is going to take 2 months, and then you start hitting all those roadblocks, and you have to adjust. I remember one project we're working on, and this guy used to be an FX trader, and he would come in every day and change the damn rule. Every day he had a different rule. Until
Moving the
one time
goalpost.
he walked into the room, and our manager says, "Listen," and he says, "If you F changes rules again, I'm going to throw you out the F window." Then he turned around and never changed the rule again.
Another one more.
But it was it was rough, and I remember that particular break because I got a friend of mine who asked me a question, what the other week is. I says, doesn't matter. If we're awake, we're in the office.
Mhm.
We were there 7 days a week. Yeah, and it's like, if you're awake, you're here. So it doesn't really matter what the other week it is.
Yeah, for seasons, short seasons, I would say yes. That's probably not an unrealistic expectation, but yeah, that's not a way to run things long term.
And I told you, once I switched industry, and I started the new job that moved away from finance, and my wife was surprised to see me that I arrived home before 5 o'clock. It's like, what are you doing here? I said, I'm done. What do you mean you're done?
Can you find something else to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The boyfriend hasn't left yet. What are you doing?
All right. Well, let's start wrapping up the episode. We're already at top of the hour. Let's leave the audience with one piece of advice for leaders looking into improve their emotional intelligence. So let's start with Juan.
So here I'll give you a good example. Uh, my team is about over 160 people offshore. Tomorrow there's an event at the company where they're bringing everybody together for the first time. And for a lot of these people, it's the first time they actually have met face to face. They're working together for a few years, but they've never met face to face. Everybody, when we're meeting this morning, everybody was concerned that they were not able to, oh, we're not going to be able to meet tomorrow. We're not going to be able to meet tomorrow. So I says, don't worry about the meeting tomorrow. You guys are served to have this festivity that you guys are going to have to come together, be as a unit. The only thing I need is that you guys take a group picture and you share it with me in our next meeting. So in our next meeting with me, I don't want to look at the board. I want to see the picture from the events. I want to see how much fun you guys had. I want to get group pictures from every team that I have there. I want to make sure I get a group picture. Right? And they were all so happy. But then I told one guy that was there, I said, "Neil, except you got to work."
All right.
But I like to keep it, I like to keep my team, I'm very concerned about the Wayne Bill. One girl says she's working on a very critical part of a project that we're going to roll out. And she told me, no, I'm going to be working tomorrow. And right away, I call her manager. I says, I don't want her to work tomorrow. She should go in and be part of the festivity. Why does she have to? And then I guess the manager called and then she contacted me and says, no, I'm going because I have an injury on my foot and I can't travel. So I'll be home working. I said, okay. So now I don't feel as bad, but I was very concerned, as to why, one day is not going to make a difference, not going to break or hit the 10 line. So you have to be aware of what people are going through personally, emotionally. You got to know everything that's going on with your team. So the one advice, we saw, for an upcoming leader is be aware of not just of your deadlines and your targets, but be aware of the people they're behind that. Be aware of what they're going through because they also have a life besides that, and always spend time to get to know your team personally. I wish this event that would have planned it better, so I could have traveled to India and be part of it.
Oh, next time I want to go.
Yeah.
All right, Tadd.
If I could leave you with anything, it would be simply this. Don't be afraid of your emotions because we all have them. We are human beings and we are emotional creatures. But to probably pull words out of Tanner's mouth and what we said many times before, you can't always control that first thought that comes in your mind or that first emotion, but you can control the second. And if you get disciplined enough to not immediately react to every bit of information, good or bad, before you learn a little bit more, that will serve you so well in your leadership career.
Oh my God, those are golden nuggets right there, man. Ooh, I wished my younger self 20, 30 years ago would have learned that.
I could have used that last week.
You could have called. I mean,
Tanner?
Yeah, so for me, and Tadd pulled it right out of me. So I think self-awareness is the most important piece to be a good emotionally intelligent leader, an emotionally intelligent person. In my coaching practice, I deal with authenticity, and I believe that to truly be authentic, you have to have alignment in your mind, body, and spirit. And the only way you can do that is digging deep inside yourself. When you do that, when you align with your authenticity, it changes your energy. When your energy changes, people trust you differently. Your integrity shows up differently. So, it's all about self-awareness to me.
Great stuff. For me, active listening, making sure that we're truly listening to what the other person is saying and not listening to respond. Because if you're listening to respond, then you really are not listening. You're just waiting for this person to shut up so you can, let your words, your soup of words come out. Uh, Active listening, that gives you an opportunity when you're active listening to really ignite that empathy. So now you're using not only the active listening piece, but then the empathy piece from what someone's saying. If you guys are wanting to learn more tips, Please continue to listen to our episodes. We're going to continue to bring it. Please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. See you guys on the next episode.
See you
Bye,
later.
everyone.
Go forth and do great things.
Amen.
Right.